I had to let the intro roll a little bit longer today because I haven't heard that breakdown in a while. Forgive me. But here we are. Another wonderful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in the neighborhood. Won't you be mine? Won't you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Please be my neighbor. Happy Tuesday, one and all. Welcome to the show. I'm Grindhead Jim, as I'm sure you know by now. And if you don't, that's who I am. Hope you all are having a great day. Hope your week is starting off with a fucking bang, doing exactly what you want for you. And if not, make it happen. Okay. Yes, Troy, chat works today, apparently. And we got Murder here. We got Troy here. And, we're going to be playing some Division today. We're going to be playing some Destiny today. And I want to talk about diversity because as I widen my palette of on-stream games and try to reignite my passion for gaming in general, the word diversity comes up in my head because, I am diversifying. I am doing multiple things within, the space, but also I'm coming across more people, different types of people, things like that. And I've always considered myself a proponent of diversity, but it's not something I talk about a ton. Not really, because for my thought process and my beliefs and my philosophies, humanity is diverse. That's a fact, and you just have to accept that and be able to accept that there are people of different races, different cultures, different religions, and everyone has to learn to live together. To me, that's just what has to happen. There isn't a debate there, to me. But I realize that not everyone feels that way. Some people feel like diversity is something that we have to push for, because of what's going on with, you want to talk about racial diversity. We talk about things like white privilege, which definitely exists as a white male. I can attest to that. So we have to push for diversity and equality, which diversity and equality are the same thing. You can have a room full of people representing every culture, race, creed, sexuality, and religion and all that stuff, and not have equality. So this is not a discussion about equality, because I think that equality needs to exist, period. And I don't know how we do that. But diversity is the subject today. Diversity is subject. Are there situations where, whether we're talking about variety of gaming or within the game's culture, within our social environments, everything, that diversity doesn't exist naturally? And if so, how do we achieve that? Is it something we need to achieve at all times? So again, this is not a discussion about equality. It's a discussion about diversity, because equality needs to happen. That's my whole discussion. I can't do a couple hours on that. I can't, because I'm like, no, equality's a thing. It needs to be a thing. And if you don't believe that, go fuck off and die. That's it for me. Morning, George. How's George? Got murder caller George. That's a personal win for me. Getting murder to call Graves George. Such a huge win. But I feel like there's been a lot of talk in gaming about not everyone being represented within the games, within the game lore, for example. Okay. I'll put this out there right now. I don't care what the historical roots are of the game that you are playing at all. I don't. No, you're totally supposed to call her George. I was just the only person that was calling her George for a while. Everyone else just always referred to me calling her George. As far as I'm concerned, you can totally call her George. But I don't give a fuck what the historical background is, what the context is culturally for the game you're playing. There should be different gender options for your player. Period. There should be. Now, I realize that there are some games where that's not that may not be possible within the confines of the story you want to tell. So, like, I think Detroit among Beyond Human, that was totally possible, and they didn't do it. Spider-Man, you're telling a story about Spider-Man, Peter Parker. So I'm like, well, that's Peter Parker. You can't make him, Katrina. So, if you're telling a story about an established character or you're establishing a lore or whatever, that's fine. When you're playing a game that you are taking on a role, that you are creating the character in essence, all gender options should be available, period. All race options should be available. You take something like Second Life, which Farron is really heavily into. Like, she knows her shit in Second Life. It's like crazy. They do everything in there, and that's wonderful. I think that's why it's so popular, that you can inhabit anything you want. You can represent yourself, your people, your culture, or you can dabble in things that maybe you want to be. It's a beautiful thing. So, what do you guys think about that? I mean, do you think that we should be able to be whatever we want to be in any game? Like, should you be allowed to go into the division and be a 10-foot tall, scaly dragon that happens to be homosexual and practices Buddhism? Should that be a thing? Should every character creation be like, whatever you want? Or should it be, okay, it has to fit the lore, but you should be able to be whatever gender you want or what have you? And furthermore, and this is something that you don't hear nearly enough about, in a world where we have, it's no longer just about being male or being female. Like, gender fluidity is a thing, right? And I feel like you can't tell me there's no one running around. In fact, you cannot tell me, because I know for a fact, because I served with these people, that there aren't people that identify as gender fluid or queer running around in the military, shooting guns. They exist. They're a thing. And before anyone says, I'm just trying to paint a picture here, guys. I think you should be whatever you want within the game's universe. Fair. Depends upon the game's touchability. Now, there was a big stink about, like, Battlefield 1. Put the history aside for a second of that game. Like, put aside the fact World War I, World War II, how many females versus males maybe did or didn't participate in the war. I don't think that matters. I don't think it matters, because these games are not here to teach you history. They're not. There are some things they can spark your interest about history, like an Assassin's Creed or something like that may give you an interest in history, but it's not a history lesson. If you want to play as a male, female, queer, what gender fluid, whatever it is, you should be able to do that, in my opinion. Murderotica says, I don't want to be a seahorse with erectile dysfunction in Far Cry, but in an aquarium game, sure. Spoiler alert, Murderotica wants to be a seahorse with erectile dysfunction. Skeletroy says, diversity is situational to the subject. I recall a few years ago there was an uproar about not being able to play as other races in The Witcher, a game set in the mythology of like 1400 Scandinavia. If the developers give you the option, great. If they don't, I don't feel like it should be an issue. I can definitely see where this is coming from, because their creative vision is their creative vision. However, I would counter that a very similar style game in Mass Effect gave you all the options, and the game was not in any way detracted because of it. Now, granted, The Witcher was also meant to be a story about a very specific character, no? So, there's arguments there. Like where does the creative freedom end and the player freedom begin? That's really where the question is. Starchbilly says, why not leave gender out? Why does my Division character need a listed gender, just an avatar and a name? And I agree with that. However, I agree with your point that it shouldn't be an issue. But that's kind of the point. It shouldn't be an issue. However, I don't identify as a cat. I should not be forced to play a cat in the Division either, right? So You don't have to like list it. It doesn't have to be like this, I'm a gender fluid, whatever. It shouldn't have to be something that you're screaming from the rooftops and is a huge announcement on your character. But you should be able to create a character that you can identify with or role play as that makes you comfortable. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying people should throw it in your face. I'm not saying that it should be thrown in your face what you pick. Like, I don't care. Like that's the kind of the joke we were making yesterday with Charger Hawk, because his character looks a lot like Lenny Kravitz. It's a black man. Charger Hawk is not a black man. Not even a little bit. So it was interesting. And you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Such Ability says, I hate that in GTA Online my male character doesn't have access to female clothing. There you go. There you go. That is something. I think that's an excellent point, actually. You should be able to do that sort of thing. It shouldn't be that difficult for them to make, especially with the amount of money that Rockstar is raking in on GTA Online. See, this is the kind of conversation I wanted to get into. You don't have to, make a big neon sign that announces what you're wanting to do. But you should be able, if you're world building, if you're character building, if you're role playing, you should have all the tools available to you, especially in a game like GTA, where anything should be able to go for the most part. Murder Rock says most playable characters are dudes. As a female, sometimes I'm like, oh, come on, I wanted to play a girl, but it's not the game ruining for me. And that's awesome that it doesn't ruin the game for you. But I would argue that part of the reason it doesn't ruin the game for you is because you have been conditioned over many years to just accept that that's the way it is. That's the status quo. My opinion, okay? I don't think you should have to accept that. I understand why at this point that's kind of par for the course, but I don't think that's right. And that's kind of my standpoint on it. Murder says, The Sims did a great job of including everyone, I think. There's specific genders or custom. Anyone can wear anything. I think that's perfect. And that's an EA game. That's a huge game, So I feel like that's something that it shows it can be done. Mass Effect shows it can be done. Resonov says classical conditioning. There you go. You're probably studying that in school or just recently did. Using them big, fancy university words. I like messing with them. How you doing, Rez? How many lights are there? How many lights are there, buddy? Yeah, that was good. We'll have another one in a minute. A good Gatorade is hard to beat, man. I don't know. Is there 3 lights? Is there 5 lights? Are there 12? Only Rez can tell us how many lights there are. But I just woke up. I can't count. I'll do it for him. It's 4 lights. It's true. Tom says, if the game is something with character creation, I don't see why they can't make the options as fast as possible. I agree. And I talk a lot about power fantasy. I talk a lot about role playing in games and stuff like that. And for example, I don't identify as anything other than what I am. I am a white heterosexual male. I don't really have a lot of identification outside of that. However, in game, it's going to go one of 2 ways with my characters in game. I'm either going to make something that looks as close to me as possible so that I can identify directly with it, or in the case of Destiny, which was not something that I had done a lot of, I created a character that I was happy to look at for 10 years. I didn't want to look at me for 10 years. There were no beards, therefore I wasn't making a character that looked like me. So I had to make something that I wanted to look at. So I made Alice. Alice is fine to look at. And I was grateful to have that option, Back as far as Rainbow Six Vegas, you could put your own face on a character using the webcam. It was a little crude, but it worked. They took a picture of your front, picture of your side, just glued it on the polygon. It was pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I dug it. I was very happy to see that existed. Staunchability says, my Destiny characters are all female, but it was unintentional. How was it unintentional? Was it something that just kind of happened? You just went for what looked good and they just happened to be female, or you just kind of went through it and blah, 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 because you were going to wear the helmet all the time anyway? Tom says, even Splatoon and Splatoon 2 have skin color options, and you're playing as a humanoid squid kid. You can switch back and forth between male and female avatar, which I remember seeing some non-binary gender fluid folk being stoked about. Right, so that's just it. If they give you character creation, go nuts with the options. Just because you can change Mario's costume in Smash Brothers doesn't mean it's something that's needed in Mario's games. Okay. Murda says, there's no reason RPG games shouldn't offer both, but I understand why some games don't, because the story and shit. Exactly. Like, I do feel like if you're telling a very specific story about a specific character that I am not meant to inhabit, right? You're telling a story about Mario, or you're telling a story about, Bruce Willis, whatever. I get that. Like story-based games where you're like trying to tell a story about this character, I understand. But there are many games where there's a character that you're establishing. You could probably do some gender options, in my opinion. But if you're meant to role play, okay, which more and more games are doing, that's where I think it comes into play. Like, I don't think you should have to. There shouldn't be a female option for Mario if you're telling just a Mario story, right? Like that, I understand that, and I'm not arguing that. But I feel like when there's something that again has those role play options, that's where it needs to have. Everyone needs to be included to the best of your ability, because it's just fair game. And Stouchability says, yeah, I got one of each race, but it all female just sort of happened. Just sort of happened, huh? I get it. Playing as Bruce Willis, sign me up for the beta. Well, there's the Die Hard trilogy on PS1. There's that. There's other games that he was in, I think. Troy says, a relevant case for character creation versus base characters is Destiny and Borderlands. I feel that both do great at what they do. There you go. People that play Destiny would argue that the character creation is not nearly as robust as it needs to be, but it covers a lot of bases. Borderlands, I've never booted that game, so I don't even know what the character creation is like there at all. But I hope it's good. But I know the characters within that world are very diverse and different, which I love. So it's one of those where do you go things. Like, can any of you guys give me an example of a game that has a static character in it from a role-playing or storytelling perspective that would have been easy, or it would have been possible to change gender, sexual orientation, appearance, and the game still be every bit as good as it was? And it doesn't matter what game it is. If you can think of one that it would have worked, and they didn't have that, give me that example. Also, perhaps give me an example where the game's storytelling could potentially be better if they made it a static character. Reverse that for me. See if you can give me an idea of that. Troy says the characters in Borderlands play a relevant part in the backstory. It's important for them to be them. Yes. Yeah, because you can't just make everything random in-game and then have the story be cohesive. That's not going to work. Your characters have to be your characters. But when you're role-playing, you have to feel some kind of a connection with that character, I feel. And I always try to put myself in the shoes of the person who's not a white male. If I were making this character what I feel represented because it bothers me. Murder says, I'll have to think. If I can't think of one during the stream, I'll post in Discord. This would be an interesting question for Discord. I think Grindhead. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we should post it after the stream. I think that needs to be a thing moving forward, that after every stream, we take the topic of the day and put it in the Grind Fam, or we could do it in the morning prior to the show to try and get some conversation rolling. I don't know. I will leave those details to you, my illustrious community manager, Murderotica. Although sometimes I don't think of the topic until right before stream. It's true. I thought of this one 10 minutes before I started. Tom says, I'd argue any Zelda game could have had Link have changes aside from design, given he's a blank slate. That's fair. I hadn't even considered that. So you're saying Link because Link sounds... It could be a unisexual or omnisexual name. Could change his skin color, could change gender, all that stuff. That makes perfect sense, actually. It's a great idea. Stockability says Assassin's Creed, which they seem to be fixing. Excellent example. I think Assassin's Creed could do a lot with telling the story from the perspective of the person playing it rather than just creating this character, which is not both types of storytelling are good, but I feel like Assassin's Creed in particular could benefit from a greater sense of role-playing. I think that's a great idea. Rez agrees with that. Awesome. What about Resident Evil? How cool would that be to create a character and then have that character be all fucked up throughout the entire game? You know? I don't know who Elias Tofay is. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right. It's crazy, right? I don't know who that is. Look at the side of my head. My hair is getting big. It's getting big. Should probably put it back again. It's doing that curly Q thing it does. Definitely pronounced toothfix. Definitely pronounced toothfix. I love it. Murder. You the best, fam. You the best. He's a voice actor for Adam Jensen. I did not ask for this. I took French. It's fine. Fine. Sauce Billy says, I think the Fable and Saint Row games do the character creation well. Yes. I have heard nothing but that. Elias Toothfix. Elias Toothfix. You know, and then the porn parody is like, Eli ass toothfucks. I don't know. Is it crazy? See, that's what I like about this community. We can have these really serious discussions about the state of our culture and still make butt and pussy and dick jokes. That's the Grind Fam right there. That's what we do. We can sit here and just talk about anything. It's fucking amazing. It is the best thing in the world. You know, you're not going to see that at any political convention. Well, we have to raise diversity. We have to raise, we have to make sure that their health care is paid for. Well, because if you have some illicit sex the night before and maybe your dick's burning, you want to know it's paid for. You gotta get that dick extinguished, you understand? You're never gonna see that in a political rally. You should. I feel like we should have a more personal relations, some kind of a more personable relationship with our politicians. I think that if there was less rhetoric and more emphasis placed on relating to each other and having human discussions, the more would get done. You know, not just in politics, but in things like this. I think people are so worried about having these conversations that, well, I want to make sure everyone is equally represented and want to make sure that our bottom line's unaffected by this, you know. Because the thing is, you know, there were people that when they put female character creation in Battlefield, right? Everybody like, I'm not buying that game. Like, that's like saying I don't like tuna fish, and because they have tuna on the bar at the sushi place, you're not going to eat the rest of the food you do like. Like, stupid. Stock says, I got to drive to my doctor. Y'all have fun. You have fun, sir. As much fun as one can have at a doctor. Hope all goes well for you. It's a pleasure to see you, as always. Staunch Billy, awesome individual. Thank you for being here. But I don't understand, like, that's where diversity starts to get under my craw. It's like the existence of things different from the existence of ideas and people that are different from what you know is not, it's not a threat to you. And I've never understood why people seem to think that sometimes. It bothers me. Whereas I don't get how that's the deal breaker. I agree. The King says this isn't gameplay. I'm suing for false advertising. Well, first of all, it flat out says, oh shit, it does say Division. He's right. It does. It does say that. You know. So I'll switch it real quick. I thought I switched it to just chatting. I didn't. That's all right. I'll switch it, and then I'll switch it back. Decaying is trying really hard not to get me TOS violation on Twitch, which is smart. We could just always put the game in there, but I'm not going to do that. Reznov says the cover for Battlefield 5 looks better than any I remember. I agree. Murder says we buy male-only character games all the time without wanting like a baby back bitch. Yet somehow when women are perceived as an issue in gaming, that's what I'm saying. Murder is that you're used to just doing it. I don't think you should ever be made to feel that you have to be comfortable with the status quo. I think the status quo is it needs to die hard. It needs to die a really painful but quick death. There's just no reason for it, in my opinion. I think that there's more. There's so much more that we should be able to express within this sphere of the human experience, and I don't think it's being represented enough. I don't think it's being represented enough at all. My 2 cents, of course. You should be able to make that guy. Decaying, bringing up things I said 3 months ago in passing. But yes, ninjas scared of females, apparently, in games. I don't get it. It's a whole other thing. Because I know he's goading me into saying this, I'll just say it now. Vaginas aren't scary. Now, I've said it. We'll move on. It's... and so far we've mainly talked about gender, to say nothing of skin color and the culture surrounding skin color and so forth. Which could be touchy, And I would say that more often than not, skin color is not nearly as difficult to come by as the gender thing, which, if you can do skin color, what's the big... I know. They gotta make whole other character models, Jim. Well, you're making millions of dollars on your game. Fucking put some of it into building some tits. Sorry. And to be fair, have you ever played a video game? Ever. That only had male characters from start to finish, or only female characters? Like, there's not a single female or male in there. Probably not. So the whole argument, you gotta create all new character models, kind of goes out the window. If you're building character models for NPCs, it can't be that hard to just port that over into the engine. Pac-Man has all male characters. Correct. Troy with the real answers. It's true. Tom says 3 protagonist model GTA 5 actually makes me want one or more female protagonists in whatever GTA 6 ends up being. If they do the same thing again, if we ever get a GTA 6, I think it's a very compelling point. I think that what I would like to see for GTA 6, let's say they do the 3 protagonist thing again. Let's just say they do that, right? What if they made it so you could create each of those characters? How cool would that be? Where you do a GTA 5 model of the story, but you create the character. And maybe you could choose from a dozen different names or something, so that all the dialogue lines up and shit. Like, I think that'd be kind of cool. Reznov says WWE 2K18 My Player. There's no female characters in that at all? Really? I guess because if you're a male wrestler, you're not wrestling female wrestlers, I guess. Makes sense, but within the confines of that world, that makes sense. It does make sense. But there are female characters in the game WWE 2K18. You're drilling down too much. Because in WWE 2K18, there are female characters that are playable. Are there not? Reznov Decaying says, or the Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man's a thing as well, but all he did was put a bow tie on, or not bow tie, like a hair bow on them, and said they were female. I'd argue that the Pac-Man universe is asexual, but that's a whole thing. But I do think I should probably get to playing a game here, as one is wont to do, like I am wont to do. So we'll continue to talk diversity in the division.